Hello and welcome. Sunil Gavaskar, cricketer, best known for his straight dive and a consistent technique, and is now the interim president for the Board of Cricket for Control in India, looking after the IPL for the next 2 months. The big question is, can he swing it for cricket? Because there are some fundamental questions about the game itself that are at stake here. And joining me to answer these questions and your questions as you send them in is Ayaz Memon, cricket journalist, also known as @cricketwallah. Ayaz, thank you very much this morning for joining in. So let's begin with first defining the problem, as we always do, right? What is Gavaskar here to do in this interim role at the IPL or at the BCCI for the IPL?
Well, he's been parachuted, to use a contemporary word
term
now.
in politics.
Yeah, politics. He's been parachuted into this role. Obviously, Srinivasan stepping aside,
Right.
and the IPL has been the reason why the BCCI finds itself in this right royal mess.
Right. Yeah.
And the Supreme Court bench has deemed it necessary that somebody from the outside comes and runs it. Now, they must have looked around and found there's not too many people, and they've chosen Gavaskar. Incidentally, his name came up very interestingly because the council was, saying that we need people like Kumble, Tendulkar, Dravid, Ganguly, and the justices asked, what about Gavaskar? Where is he?
Yeah.
Get him in because of his seniority, his age, his experience, and whatever else.
Maybe they watched him and liked him while in
And
his
he's
game.
probably that vintage like me, for whom Gavaskar was a role model and a hero. So here he is, but not
Without reason.
Not without reason, and also a contentious choice. There's not without opposition.
There are former cricketers have already started pointing out that he's not the right man for the job because he's very commercially minded. He's been there in the BCCI only to earn money and so on.
Yeah, but he's been paid by the BCCI to be a commentator. I don't think that's a fact which is hidden.
Right.
He has been part of the governing council earlier, interestingly, and he opted out of the governing council of the IPL because he wanted to be paid. He said, look, you want my services? This is a commercial enterprise, I need to be paid for it. So he opted out of the governing council when they decided that they will not pay anybody money.
Right.
He and the late Pataudi actually opted out.
Right. So what is his, okay, let's ask two questions. What was the need for someone in that role, and what is he specifically going to do or can do in the next 2 months?
Well, Govind, to be honest, time is very limited. I don't know how much.
Why is time limited?
Because his assignment is only for 2 months virtually. June 1, the IPL
No, my
ends.
larger question, why is time limited? Because IPL 7 will start in any
Yes.
case in a month's time.
Yes.
It will continue and then more IPLs will follow after that.
But his assignment is till this IPL.
Okay. And so what is he supposed to specifically deliver in that period?
So now that's the interesting question. What is he supposed to specifically deliver? It's everything, and perhaps, what is it that will come about? Incidentally, the role has been bifurcated. Though he's the interim president of the BCCI,
Yeah.
outside of the IPL, it's Shivlal Yadav who's going to
Yeah. The non-IPL will be run by a different person.
So his focus is on IPL, which is for a reason because the IPL is in a mess.
Right.
So what can Gavaskar do? In my opinion, taking aside the objections and pros and cons of his assignment, the thing which I feel the IPL has always lacked has been a strong, robust governing council. The governing council has been virtually made up of a cozy club, and Gavaskar knows that better than anybody else because he was part of it. So there are politicians and there are, whoever else is there. They all bigwigs associated with the BCCI. My point is that Gavaskar should institute or bring about some changes where at least you have 2 directors who are drawn from the outside world. They are not from the BCCI. They are men of great integrity. Maybe I'm just tossing names.
How about just cricketers or just sportsmen?
No, I'm saying how about a Deepak Parekh
Okay.
who understands, because this is a commercial enterprise.
Okay.
So 2 such people who I feel, and when I say I, the layperson feels, these guys are not in the cesspool of board politics, in the mess that is there. They have a very high degree of credibility in the outside world, and they are there.
Right.
You also need an ombudsman. I think a venture like this cannot run only on a COO appointed by the BCCI. And I think fundamentally, which is very critical and not been done, there is no voice of the owners on the governing council. Even as a non-executive director, so to speak, there are 8 franchises who have pumped in big money. They have no voice.
Okay. So let me take some quick questions now. Suman has tweeted to us. He says, what would be the top 3 things for Indian cricket that Sunny has to do with his new role as BCCI chief? Obviously, interim BCCI chief.
Yes, and I'll restrict it to what is the IPL, not the BCCI, the other functions. Which, as I mentioned, address the IPL. I would think he needs to reconstitute the governing council if he can.
Right.
get in these external directors, get an ombudsman, may or may not at this point in time, but certainly get a representative of the franchises on the board.
Right.
Look at what has happened. Rajasthan Royals and Chennai Super Kings were almost kicked out. Now Chennai Super Kings also happens to be India Cement's acquisition, which is also BCCI linked. It's a different matter. And I think the ACU, anti-corruption unit, he must look at more aggressively, ask them to report to him directly, and see how things can be improved where this aspect of the game is concerned.
Okay, so you're saying focus on cleaning up the administrative perception.
Absolutely.
Part of it. I mean, okay.
And so I hope he'll create a template,
yeah,
which maybe the IPL and the BCCI can use in later years.
Okay. So what will he? Okay. So you're saying do some things which are really for the longer term. Is there something that he needs to do in the next week or 10 days that will in some ways give people the satisfaction that this all is reasonably well at the IPL?
First things first, he needs to summon emergency meeting of all the franchise owners, of the anti-corruption unit, perhaps of all the captains of the teams. And in a sense lay down the law, say I'm the boss, this is what
and you've always argued, Ayaz, that the laws have always been there, the problem has been the implementation when it comes to corruption. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The problem has been the governance. It's also because the whole thing was put together very hastily and with almost like, friends, family and other animals. The whole IPL was structured around that.
You're referring obviously to Lalit Modi and
and the BCCI. Lalit was was spearheading the thing, but because it was a counter to the Indian Cricket League and the fact that India had won the 2007 World Championship and T20 had become so big, cash in, stop, an external guy coming in, and therefore put together very hastily. The laws are fine, the rules are fine, it's the implementation which has been the problem, and year after year it's been a problem.
Okay, so let's look at the game itself which is going to start. Now, two teams which were most likely going to be out of the game are now back in, right? Yeah. Can the viewing public assume that the part that was always under suspicion about these two teams, Chennai Super Kings and Rajasthan Royals, has been resolved? Is there? I mean, do we feel comfortable that there's no hanky-panky likely to be there?
I think we have to go by what the Supreme Court has decided. The Supreme Court has decided not to ban these two teams.
Okay.
So we have to go by the wisdom of the Supreme Court. Having said that, it's not, this could be symptomatic of the problems across the IPL.
Yeah.
So Gavaskar's job would be to address, it's not just about CSK and Rajasthan Royals. That came into the open. We don't know what the hell is happening elsewhere. So he needs to address that. Anti-corruption unit. I think a lot of people don't believe that the BCCI and the IPL Governing Council has taken enough cognizance that these things could happen, and therefore the anti-corruption unit needs to function far more aggressively and more robust fashion. So the captains, the franchise owners, reiterating what can happen if there's any misdemeanor needs to be made right up front before the tournament starts, not after something has happened.
Right. So, this is a good time to get into the larger question, right? So, by appointing Sunil Gavaskar as this interim president of the BCCI, the Supreme Court has at least shown that it would want a sports person to run the business or the affairs of cricket in India. Right? Yeah. How do we build on this as a larger theme for this country? Because everywhere you go, and it's not just cricket as we know, it's usually non-sports people and businessmen, politicians, businessmen who run the show, mostly to the sports detriment.
Mostly, perhaps. I mean, I'm not so sure if even if you look at it empirically, that holds true. For instance, hockey has been in a mess, not because of outside administrators alone.
Okay.
It's been in a mess because of the players being divided amongst themselves, belonging to two factions. So I'm not.
Could they have been more united?
I mean, they were, but they fell out with each other.
Okay.
So I think what you need is obviously experience, sagacity, and understanding of how things run, rather than saying just because I've played cricket at the highest level I can run an enterprise. That may or may not be possible. Maybe some training, some mentoring needs to happen. So from the top of my head, if I have to ask, can somebody like Rahul Dravid run BCCI? I think maybe yes, because he's trained himself like that, he thinks like that. Some other player who may have been a great player may not necessarily be the ideal man to steer the ship. He may be a good face. So I think in Gavaskar's case, there are pros and cons. His past, he's in and out of the government.
Let me add another tweet that's come in from Anil K. Singh. He says, post-retirement, Sunny has always been an establishment man. Mr. Srinivasan is with a safe placeholder.
Well, he's been.
So that's what people think.
He's been an establishment man as well as an anti-establishment man. You know, he's been different things.
And there's one more. Vedam 55 writes saying that will Gavaskar lick the honey pot in the short time he's foisted upon BCCI?
You know, the advantage, the disadvantages are there that he's perhaps too close to the powers that be, and therefore is he going to do anything different?
Yeah.
The advantages are also there that because he has been so close, then he knows that what can be done, what are the hurdles. He's also been part of the governing council, so and he's opted out. So hopefully, one believes or one hopes that he will see the flaws that have existed and what can be done to improve them. I'm highlighting a few, like the governing council itself. Ultimately, you can't have a 10-12 member governing council which doesn't govern.
So here's one more tweet that's coming from Ganesh Rangaswamy. He says, "Please save the time. Gavaskar will not too diplomatic and wedded in the system."
I hope not.
But the diplomatic part seems to be coming across more than once. I guess we all know that.
I think also because he has been so closely attached with the BCCI. But he has been quite mercurial. If you look at his career, he's been an establishment man as well as every now and then a very strongly anti-establishment man.
Okay.
But I don't think here the issue is whether he is establishment or anti-establishment.
Okay.
Here the issue is he's a man of the world. He has been part of the ICC technical committee for many years. He's a strong voice. He's a man of terrific credentials as a cricketer. This is an opportunity for him to say, I've got maybe 2.5 months. Let me leave something, a template behind, which is of value to IPL and to BCCI.
Right. So let's have a little bit of fun here while we wait for more tweets which are coming in. You know his cricketing or batting technique quite well, right? And then we started off by saying he's the master of the straight drive.
Yeah.
What can we extrapolate from his batting technique to his managerial technique?
Well, I don't think he'll go. He'll be reckless or he'll take outrageous decisions. So
it sort of fits with being diplomatic.
Yeah. No, I mean it's not just about diplomatic, and he'll be very measured because that's been the hallmark of his cricket.
Okay.
He's been very measured. He's been very correct. In that sense, he's diplomatic, but he will not leave any avenue unexplored. He may not do completely out of the box stuff because that is perhaps not in his nature as a cricketer, just to extrapolate his cricketing expertise. But whatever exists within that framework, he will exploit everything to the hilt.
Okay, but he's also, I mean, a slow and steady player, right? And he's a test match man who is now being foisted upon IPL. I mean, not to stretch the analogy too far. And IPL, as we know, is all about 20 overs.
At one point in time, he had the fastest century by an Indian in ODIs.
Okay.
Just before he retired, the only century he's made, he went hammer and tongs. The last, towards the end of his career, when he was 36, 37, 38, he was outscoring Shrikant.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that he had it in him to do everything. He adopted a kind of role in Indian cricket which is remembered most for his being very measured run accumulator. He's not a Virendra Sehwag.
Yeah.
He's Sunil Gavaskar.
Yeah.
You know, so different personalities.
Yeah. So exactly, I think that's the fundamental question, right? I mean, what do we need? Do we need a Gavaskar to save cricket from cricket in some ways, or do we need a Virendra Sehwag? What does the larger India want today?
I mean, even if you look, I think Sehwag has been your biggest match winner in the last 10 years because that's the way he played.
Yeah.
Gavaskar was not the match winner, but that was a different ethos in which India played. You were just making runs to survive in a test match. But when you are running an enterprise for however brief a period, you are, the onus of that is on you. A Viru Sehwag could get away with a reckless stroke because people will say that's what that's his game.
Sure.
If Gavaskar played that kind of a stroke and got out, the whole world would heap, descent on him. So I think in terms of understanding, and I think where Gavaskar, the advantage he has is he understands international cricket extremely well. He has been part of this scene after quitting, non-stop involved with the game for 25, 26 years. He's been consistently with the game either as a commentator, largely as a commentator and a columnist, but also ICC technical committee, governing council, this, that, everything else. Now he needs to focus all his energies and attention on saying, I've got a 10 week period in which to provide some kind of fix, let me do it.
Right. So two more questions that have come, I think. So one is, how different is he from Srinivasan? I mean, I guess we all know he's vastly different, but how different is he for the role as you see it? And secondly, is this something that he would have done otherwise had it not been given to him?
That's a good question. Would he have done it otherwise? His evolutionary path has been not very consistent in that sense. Apart from the fact that he's been a media person, that he's not let go at all ever since he stopped playing. But he's been part of ICC technical committee. He gave it up because it clashed with his commentary.
Sure.
He's been part of the governing council. He gave it up because he said, I need to be paid. Otherwise, why should I do it for a commercial enterprise? What he has stuck to is his job as a columnist and commentator. Maybe it's very lucrative. Maybe it's very satisfying. I think he would not have immediately got into this BCCI administration, perhaps never, but for the fact that it has now come to him. And somewhere I feel maybe that he senses there's a challenge, maybe I can do something. Otherwise, only 10-12 weeks, is not something. It's not a career.
Right. Yeah, you're effectively, I don't know, 8th man or 9th man going into sort of save the match.
And in a mess.
And cricket.
And you're going into a mess. You're not you're not riding a crest and saying everything is fine, I just have to ride it.
Right.
You're diving into the deep end and saying, now let's see what can be done.
Right. So Srinivasan has been asked to step aside, N Srinivasan, also of India Cements. How is Gavaskar different? Or rather, what was wrong with Srinivasan that maybe is right with Gavaskar that can help solve this last minute mess that
see, in Srinivasan's case, several issues cropped up. One is about much touted conflict of interest. As BCCI president, he owns a team which employs so many players. One of them happens to be the captain of
son-in-law is also
son-in-law. The fire started in his backyard on this corruption thing. So those are not the issues with Gavaskar. But I think for Gavaskar, and the fact is Gavaskar's played at the highest level. In a sense, if there's something happening, then perhaps he should be alerted, or he will alert himself far earlier and far quicker than somebody else. And he also have the authority to go and question players, captains, managers, coaches with more conviction than somebody who's never held a bat at this level. Even if you may be very powerful, that's a different matter. So these are advantages that Gavaskar would enjoy over Srinivasan.
Right. So, last question, I think, Ayaz, and which is the bottom line question for the day. We started by saying, will Gavaskar swing it for cricket? What is your yes and no answer, and maybe why?
I think if he really puts in the effort and the energy, he can swing it for cricket in the sense that he can create a template which can hold good over the next few years for the for many years for the IPL. But if it is just maintaining status quo, then his contribution is not going to be, it will just be a little blip in the history of the IPL. I think here's an opportunity for him to aggressively put his foot down and say, this is what I want in the IPL this year. Subsequently, if BCCI wants to change it, that's their problem. This is how I see fit, best. And I think people will start, even the BCCI will start looking at it a little more closely and with some deference.
Right, and to just to go over what you've always, you've said in the past as well, IPL is something that must be saved despite what some people think about it as a proposition.
You build a company, some guys are, corrupt, doing whatever things, you don't shut down the company. You replace them.
Don't be nihilistic to use your
term. Don't be nihilistic. Clean up doesn't mean you destroy. So I'm of that belief. I think Gavaskar has an opportunity in his understanding how the IPL should be run, can be run, put it out, let it run successfully, and see if BCCI then accepts it, and in perpetuity it kind of accommodates at least some of the measures.
Right. So the question we started by asking is, can Gavaskar swing it for cricket? The answer is yes, as Ayaz Memon puts it, and as some of you have pointed out in your tweets, you've also expressed some skepticism, doubt, but the question, can something be done in the limited period that Gavaskar has in his hands here? Perhaps the answer is yes, but the opportunity is great to create some kind of template which will hopefully resolve some of the larger issues that plague not just IPL but Indian cricket. Thanks for watching. We're going to be back next week.